Hello and welcome, and this week we're going to be talking about perfect competition. Perfect competition is one of four market structures we cover in microeconomics. It is the best of all possible situations, so whenever you hear the word perfect, it's a theoretical extreme. So what we're going to be talking about is what is a perfectly competitive market, what is a perfectly competitive firm, what is a market environment. When we say it's the best market environment, what does that mean? What are some others? What are the key assumptions for perfect competition? And most importantly, we're going to differentiate what happens to that firm in both the short run and in the long run. So when we say market structure, we're really talking about the environment that the firm operates in. And what we're really going to get at is, does that firm have a lot of market power or no market power? And by market power, what we're talking about is their ability to change and influence the market price and output. On one extreme is perfect competition, right here. On the other extreme is monopoly. Monopoly, as you remember the board game, and we'll talk about next chapter, there's only one seller. They are the market, and they have the ability to change the price at will, or at least ask for different prices. Then there are two in the middle, which are monopolistic competition and oligopoly. So these are the four main market structures we'll talk about. There are plenty of others, monopsopy, all sorts of other types of market structures. But these are the four main ones. We're going to create a model of a perfectly competitive market and firm. And in this, everything's going to be based off of just these four assumptions that describe what's happening in perfect competition. So we're going to have lots of buyers and sellers, and they're all really small. So one doesn't have any market power. Matter of fact, they're all so small that none of them can control the market price. That's our underlying assumption. The products are identical. We call that homogeneous or homogeneous, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And so these products are identical. So if I hold up two potatoes, you can't tell which potato came from which place. They're identical to you. Information is perfect. This is a really huge assumption that absolutely everyone knows everything. And I know that you know that I know that you know about information. So everyone knows that all the information is there. Finally, there's easy entry and exit into and out of the market. That's going to dictate what's going to happen in the long run. So everything we develop from here on out is going to be based off of these four assumptions. Also, just a real quick note, we're going to be talking about PC, and I know media often calls that politically correct. PC in economics is perfect competition. So there are no true examples of perfect competition in the world. There's nothing where we have absolutely perfect information and there's no barriers to entry and exit and all these other assumptions. But mentally, it sometimes helps to think of an example. And that example I used of agriculture or the potatoes is probably a pretty good example. So if the market for potatoes suddenly got really expensive, you could get into that market pretty easily. I mean, it's pretty easy to enter or exit the potato market. The products are identical or close enough to identical. There's some branding involved, but an Idaho potato and a Washington potato, if I take them out of the bag, I certainly can't tell which is which. So it's a theoretical extreme, and it will help you kind of think of agriculture as the closest example we have, even though by no means is it perfect competition. It's close for mental example's sake. Okay, so our goal is to use these four assumptions to figure out what the logical conclusion is. So the first outcome based on those four assumptions is that these small firms are called price takers. There's nothing these small firms can do to influence the price. We're going to talk about why they can't charge a higher price and why they won't charge a lower price. And as a result, they're stuck taking whatever price the market makes, which is the collection of all the buyers and sellers together. So why can't a firm charge more? Notice the word is can't. On the next slide, it'd be why won't. Why can't a firm charge more? If my product is identical to someone else's and I say, buy my potatoes, it's better than the other person, you're going to look and say, no, they're not. The products are identical. They're homogeneous. There are lots of sellers in the market. That was one of the core assumptions. There are many sellers. Everyone has perfect information. So even if I try and say my product is better than someone else's, you know it's not. And if I try and charge a higher price, you know where you can get the product at a lower price. So perfect information isn't going to work. If I try and raise my price even just slightly, even just a penny more, you're not going to buy from me. No one's going to buy from me. Why? My product is the same and everyone knows it. And you know where to get the product at the same price. Why won't a firm charge less? From the price taker assumption, I know that I could sell all the product I want at the given market price. Think about the price of corn. It's set at price per bushel. Why would I lower my price when I know I could sell it all at the market price? That wouldn't be logical for me. It wouldn't be profit maximizing. I can't charge more and I won't charge less. That means that I take the market price as given. So what does that mean? It means that the market, made up of all the sellers and all the buyers, establish a market price. And that market price, you could just just bring right over, and for the single firm, they could sell all the product they want at that market price. The firm has a perfectly elastic demand curve set at the market price. So that flat demand curve actually is a pretty big item. If the market price of a bushel of corn, I have no idea if this is right, is $5 a bushel, if I want to sell the first bushel, I get $5 in additional revenue. If I want to sell more, I could sell a second or a third one for $5 each. The additional revenue I get on each bushel is exactly equal to the price. My demand curve and my marginal revenue curve and the price are all exactly the same thing. To sell more, I don't have to lower my price. This is the only market where this is going to be true. This just runs through the math a little bit. If the price is $5 an item, if I sell one, my total revenue is $5. If I sell two, my total revenue is $10. My marginal revenue is the change in total revenue. So my revenue went up by $5 when I sold one more good. So 5 divided by 1 is $5. Here it went up by $5 when I sold one more, so it's $5. So in this case, my demand is equal to marginal revenue, which is also identical to my price. Just showing you, again, demand, marginal revenue, and price in perfect competition, whenever the demand curve is perfectly flat, are all identical. The basic intuition for that is this right here. In order to sell more, I don't have to lower my price to pick up more sales. So I can sell all that I want at the going rate. That's not going to be true anywhere else. What will the firm produce? This equation right here is the most important equation for the next 3 chapters. You want to produce where marginal revenue is greater than or equal to marginal cost. So in other words, if you can sell the product for $5 and it costs you less than $5, you're going to want to produce it. Over here, do I want to produce this quantity? Well, marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost. The added revenue you get is greater than the added cost you get for producing it. You want to sell. Marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost. Marginal revenue greater than marginal cost. Right here, marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Anywhere to the right of this, marginal cost is greater than marginal revenue. It costs you more to produce than what you take in, so you wouldn't want to produce. So you always want to produce where marginal revenue is greater than or equal to marginal cost. There's going to be a couple caveats to that coming up on the next slide, but that's always where you start off, where marginal revenue is greater than or equal to marginal cost. Okay, so these next 3 slides seem really confusing, but here's what's going on. You always produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Now, prices are going to be either high, really low, or somewhere in the middle. What do economists consider high prices? What do we consider really low prices? And what do we consider in the middle? And the key here is we're going to look at where the minimum of average total cost, the minimum of average variable cost. We're going to say anything up here is in category A, anything below here is in category B, and anywhere in the middle is C. And what we're going to get to is, for example, this is case 1 where the price is above average total cost. The price is above what it's costing you to produce with all your fixed costs and everything else. If that's the case, you produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost and you're making profits. If you're making profits, wonderful. So this is marginal revenue equals marginal cost. The price is high for some reason right now. You produce. This is how much it costs you to produce. If that's the case, you're making profits and you're always going to produce. Short run, long run, you're always going to produce if the price is above that threshold because you're always making money. Now, the next couple slides, we're going to say, well, what happens if you're not making money? And then what we're going to look at, we're going to break that down into 2 spots. One is where you're not even covering your fixed costs, where it's so low you would shut down because you would not cover your fixed costs and you're not covering your variable costs. And the other one is you're covering all your variable costs and some of your fixed costs. So you may want to stick around in the short run, but not the long run. Let's explain that. Okay, so this next one is prices below the minimum of average variable cost. So the price is below here. So what we're saying is on average, so first produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So let's pretend you're going to produce 50 and I'm offering you $4 to produce a pizza or whatever it is. But it costs you $5 for ingredients to make that pizza. The crust, the cheese, the meat, whatever, costs you $5 and I'm offering you $4. So do you want to produce? Well, you're losing all your fixed costs, that's the space in here, and now you're losing incremental costs as well. Would you want to do that? And the answer is no. Because we could calculate what your fixed cost is and what your losses are if you produce, and your losses would be more than if you just shut down. If you shut down, you lose your fixed costs. If the price is below average variable costs, the price is just ridiculously low, you shut down and leave immediately. What about if price is in the middle? So if it's in the middle between average variable cost and average total cost, again, you produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, that's 80. And at this case, you're covering all of your variable costs and you're covering some of your fixed costs. Yes, you're still losing money. You're losing $80 here, but you're not losing $400. If that's the case, you'd rather lose $80 than $400. In the short run, you're going to continue to produce because you're covering all of your variable costs and some of your fixed costs, but you're not going to produce in the long run. In the long run, your landlord comes to you and says, do you want to renew your contract? And you say, you know what? I'm losing money. I'm going to get out because in the long run, there are no fixed costs and you would just leave. Okay, so a quick decision tree here. If you have a market and you have this marginal cost curve and you have average variable cost, a VC, and average total cost, a TC, and you have quantity and price, if the price is below here, you are never going to produce because you're not even covering your variable costs. If your price is above this line, in the long run, actually you are always going to produce in the short run or in the long run. And if the price is between these two, you're covering some of your fixed costs and all of your variable costs. So in the short run, it's a yes, and in the long run, it's a no. So what we're doing is we are just getting this decision tree and saying, is the price above average total cost? If yes, you're going to continue to produce forever. If the price is not above average total cost, is it above average variable cost? If it is, you're going to continue to produce in the short run, but not in the long run. And if it's below average variable cost, you're just going to shut down because you're not making your money back. So what did we just do? Well, we developed the supply curve for perfect competition. We said when the price is anywhere above average variable cost, you are going to be producing along marginal cost. That is the definition of supply. Just like we derived the supply curve on production theory, now we're doing the supply curve for this particular market structure. So what's so interesting? Well, we just had 3 cases where we said, well, the firm could be making money or losing money or they shut down. So what's the big deal? What's so interesting about perfect competition? The big deal is actually where perfect competition evolves in the long run. So let's say I was making a lot of money. What's going to happen? Or if I'm losing money, what's going to happen? Why do we think this is an interesting market at all? So let's talk about the long run. Okay, so let's lay out everything we know here and let's talk about the long run. In the short run, we have a market and we have a market supply and a market demand curve. That sets the price. This becomes the firm's price equals demand equals marginal revenue. So this is the firm. They have some marginal cost curve. And they are going to produce where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. And let's say that, all right, let's make this green. That's how many products they sell. That's how much they sell it for. That's their total revenue. Now let's say they are making a profit. Well, in order for them to make a profit, the price they receive has to be greater than their average cost. So let's have their average cost look like this. If that's their average cost, on average, each one costs this much to make. So at Q star, on average, that's how much it costs to make. They're selling that many. So that's their total cost. Now what we need is how much profit are they making? All right, great. They are making this profit right here. So now what happens in the long run? Let's pretend that I'm making a lot of money. Step 1, do you know I'm making a lot of money? The answer is yes, information is perfect. Step 2, what do you want to do? Well, your goal is to also make money. That's all firms' goal. So you want to enter. Step 3, can you enter the market? Are there any barriers? And the answer is there are no barriers. You're welcome to join. So now profit is signaling for other people to enter. So if other people enter, what's going to happen to the market supply? Market supply will increase. When market supply increases, market price falls. When market price falls, the firm becomes a price taker. And as the market price falls, the amount they're going to produce, so this is price equals marginal revenue equals demand prime. Those are all changes. They're now going to produce here. They're going to produce less. Well, why are they going to produce less? Well, they're responding to the law of supply. As the price comes down, they're going to produce less. What's going to happen to their total revenue and total cost? You can draw it in there. This is going to get really sloppy. That the total revenue is going to fall, the costs are going to fall, and most importantly, the profit is going to keep shrinking. Well, if there's still profit, what's going to happen? Other people are going to enter, and they're going to keep entering and entering and entering until price hits this level right here, the minimum of average total cost. So people will keep entering until this thing, supply, hits that level, and where there's no profit. This just highlights the order and the logic. There is a worksheet that if you're in the in-class hybrid class, you will walk through. If not, you're on the purely online class, you're going to want to look through the worksheet and practice walking through these steps. After you walk through these steps once, you're golden. You'll get it. What happens? If a firm's making profit, firms know it because there's perfect information. Other firms want to enter. There are no barriers. Firms enter the market. Market supply increases, which pushes market price down. The firm takes the market price. The firms reduce their output, and eventually profits decline. And this will continue until profits hit zero. We could have just as easily said firms were losing money. What happens? Other firms are going to leave, which is going to push the market supply down, which will raise prices until, again, the final outcome has to be economic profit must go to zero. That is the key outcome that we need to get to. We knew right at the very beginning of the chapter that firms had to be price takers. They can't charge more, they're not going to charge less. The second thing we learned is with the no barriers and perfect information, economic profits have to go to zero. If not, if there were positive profits, other firms would enter and market supply would increase, price would go down, and those profits would get eroded. If there was market loss, firms would leave because there are no barriers to entry. We know that the price the consumers pay is exactly equal to the cost the firm has to produce it. The price equals the marginal cost at Q star. It happens to be where marginal revenue equals marginal cost equals price, but this outcome is really understanding that the price that the buyer pays is equal to the price it costs the firm to produce. We also learned that when the firm is producing, it's at the minimum of average total cost. When it's at the minimum of average total cost, the firm has no incentive to change the plant size at all. So that's pretty cool too. There's another outcome as well. A big outcome is this term called productive efficiency, that when the firm is producing at the minimum of average total cost, they are using their products and their resources as efficiently as you possibly can. They're not underutilizing their plant, they're not underutilizing resources, they're being efficient. And that only occurs in perfect competition. The last outcome is that firms have no incentive to advertise. Why? The products are identical. I can't say my potato is better than someone else's potato. They're identical. Information's also perfect, so you know that the products are identical. If I try to say my product is different, you're going to know. If I try to advertise and say my product is better, I can't differentiate my product and it's going to add to the cost. So remember, profit is total revenue minus total cost. I can't raise my price. It's not going to add to my revenue, but it would increase my costs, which would erode my profit, which doesn't exist in the long run anyway, and I would have no incentive to advertise. Go through and quiz yourself. Consider a firm or a market in equilibrium, and then a firm, perfectly competitive firm, the price taker, in equilibrium. Then let something happen. So we did an example where demand increased. Do something where market demand decreases, and that pushes the market price down. Now, how are firms going to respond? So go through all of these different things here and make sure that you know how the market would adjust. Once you've got that, you've mastered perfect competition. If this is an online class, I strongly encourage you to do the worksheet on this example.